Before we got the headline habit,
we got tired of waiting up for the late news.
Where's the party, dudes?
Good evening. This is the late news in Washington today.
but now with headline news.
We can watch the late news as early as we like.
Around the world every 30 minutes, this is Headline News.
Headline News. News whenever you want it.
Get the headline habit.
From Turner Broadcasting System, this is the Headline News Network.
Dear Salvation Army, I just got back from your summer camp, and it was the best. There was so much neat stuff to do, swimming and hiking and games. We got to be outside a lot, and I learned about God and nature. And one of the best parts was all the neat friends I made. I can hardly wait till next summer. I hope I get to go again. Love, Keith.
With your support of Salvation Army camping programs, more children can have a summer worth writing about.
Hi, I'm Casey Kasem. Well, the prom and graduation season is certainly an exciting time for high school seniors and families from coast to coast. It's a time for celebrating the successful end of one chapter in life while looking ahead to new challenges. Let's not close the book because of drugs or alcohol. We can all work together to make sure this prom and graduation season is a celebration of life. To the seniors of 87, be a class act. Celebrate smart. Say no to drugs and alcohol.
Sue Corbett, covering education for you.
Headline News. I'm Lyn Vaughn. President Reagan's first major speech on AIDS is receiving both cheers and jeers. His remarks came at a fundraising dinner for AIDS research last night. Frances Harden reports.
The occasion was a glittering affair hosted by Elizabeth Taylor, which raised more than $500,000 for AIDS research. It was also Ronald Reagan's first major address on federal policy on AIDS. He used the occasion to endorse recommendations put forward last week by his Domestic Policy Council.
AIDS is surreptitiously spreading throughout our population, and yet we have no accurate measure of its scope. It's time we knew exactly what we were facing, and that's why I support some routine testing.
The proposals, which were championed by conservative factions in the administration, were unpopular with many in the audience.
I've also asked HHS to add the AIDS virus to the list of contagious diseases for which immigrants and aliens seeking permanent residence in the United States can be denied entry.
In addition to immigrants, Mr. Reagan is calling for testing in federal prisons and, if appropriate, in veterans' hospitals. On the state level, the president will encourage AIDS testing for people seeking marriage licenses and those who visit sexual disease and drug abuse clinics. President Reagan also defended his administration's record on funding AIDS research. Demonstrators outside marched in memory of those who died of AIDS and called for more research money.
We got the power to fight back!
Cooperation.
Congressman Henry Waxman calls a proposal for routine testing a triumph of politics in the administration over the advice of health care experts, such as Surgeon General C. Everett Koop.
But it seems to me that what we need is an education campaign for everybody, not just for those who may be tested.
President Reagan was visibly upset by the booing he received. Nevertheless, the audience gave him a standing ovation.
The boos, hisses, and applause which greeted Mr. Reagan mirror the divisions in American society over the best way to handle a disease that has already stricken 35,000 people in the United States. Frances Harden, CNN, Washington.
Vice President George Bush delivers the keynote address to the largest gathering of AIDS experts ever this morning in Washington. Some 6,000 scientists began arriving yesterday for the third International Conference on AIDS. Researchers from Atlanta to Zaire are scheduled to present and discuss the latest information on the disease. The USS Stark may have been left vulnerable to an Iraqi attack by command errors, not equipment failure. Today's New York Times reports the ship apparently didn't follow standard defensive procedures after detecting the Iraqi jet. In Washington, the Pentagon is planning to move an aircraft carrier and an Aegis cruiser into the Persian Gulf. Meanwhile, Republican presidential candidate Alexander Haig is offering his own policy suggestion.
When you operate in these troubled Gulf waters, it's clear that in order to prevent a repeat of the misjudgments that brought about the attack on our frigate, that there's going to have to be a very intimate exchange of operational and intelligence data between Iraq and the United States.
A recent poll shows Haig is running a far more successful campaign than expected. He was one of the presidential hopefuls in Iowa this weekend. Gene Randall reports.
The Haig stuff is beyond surprising. It's nearly shocking.
Alexander Haig's campaign people say it is the best news they have had, a breakthrough. Among those Republican primary voters who volunteered opinions, 37% had a favorable opinion of Haig, second only to the 46% registered by Vice President George Bush. Haig still has high negative numbers. 28% of all the registered voters surveyed had an unfavorable opinion of him. Only Pat Robertson fared worse. Few delegates at this Republican gathering this weekend pretended to know precisely what all this meant, though former Senator Paul Laxalt, who is expected to formally announce for the presidency in the fall, said,
"Well, if I were Al Haig, or more particularly as finance chairman, I'd be delighted."
In his appearance before nearly 1,000 GOP activists, Laxalt once again keyed on his closeness to President Reagan.
I want to be part of continuing the Reagan agenda. I've lived the Reagan agenda, and as far as I'm concerned, historically, like many of you here, so have you.
White House hopeful Senator Bob Dole literally had the weekend's best orchestrated appearance. Sometimes at odds with the administration these days, Dole, too, invoked the president's name.
We're going to continue the Reagan record, and we're going to win in 1988, and that's the bottom line.
Two little-known candidates were in Des Moines, too. A Mississippi woman named Kate Heslop, whose slogan is Kate in 88, and Los Angeles economist Ben Fernandez, who proudly proclaims he was born in an abandoned boxcar.
This is the logo of my campaign.
Another political weekend in politically crucial Iowa. There will be many more before next February's presidential precincts caucuses. Gene Randall, CNN, Des Moines.
Forecasters say the spring heat wave will continue in the Northeast today, with the mercury rising into the 90s. It got up to a record-breaking 95 degrees in Hartford, Connecticut yesterday. Many people along the East Coast flocked to pools and beaches to escape the heat. Others are enjoying the warm weather at coastal resorts. But with hurricane season starting today, experts say some vacation spots could be wiped out by a major storm. John Zarella has more.
90% of the people living along the coastal United States, from Maine to Texas, have never experienced a major hurricane. That worries forecasters at the National Hurricane Center.
The concern that we have is that we're building death traps. And by that I mean we have so many people on the little islands offshore now that they may not be able to have enough time to get back to the safety of the inland areas.
The fear is that many of these offshore resort islands developed in recent years would literally disappear if a major hurricane swept across them. Neil Frank, the director of the National Hurricane Center, took a tiny island off the South Carolina coast, for example.
You got to go 20 miles out into the Atlantic to get to Fripp Island. A beautiful development. You know, a golf course, marina, and the whole package out there. Someday that's going underwater.
Forecasters know that development of the coastal United States is not going to stop. They also know that someday a giant hurricane will strike, and they say the loss of property and life could be catastrophic.
We're more vulnerable to the hurricane in the United States than we've ever been in our history, and someday, if nature decides to bring a big Camille along, or one of these storms that it's kind of weak, and then just before it hits the coastline develops quite fast to where we can't give people enough time to get off, we're going to have a death toll that's going to be in the thousands.
Frank cautions that offshore islands are not the only trouble spots. Major cities like Galveston, New Orleans, Tampa, Savannah, and Charleston could be devastated. And in Miami, estimates are that damage from a single major hurricane could reach $9 billion. How many people would die, forecasters say, depends on how many heed the warnings and move to higher ground. John Zarella, CNN, Miami.
Coming up in Headline Sports, the Stanley Cup runneth over for the Edmonton Oilers. We'll show you highlights of the final game of the National Hockey League playoffs.
Special arrangement
And with Reader's Digest, we proudly present one of the most extraordinary music treasuries ever made. You get 100 of the world's most beautiful melodies, and here they are. From the entire world of great music, you get the most loved melodies ever written. You get all these 100 beloved favorites without a single unknown, unwanted passage. Here is a priceless shortcut to musical knowledge for your family. From Reader's Digest, classic melodies so beautiful they became giant hits of our time. Every selection is one the whole world loves. All 100 world's most beautiful melodies are now yours on 3 records, 3 cassettes, or 3 8-track tapes. And the price, just $19.98. These Reader's Digest treasuries are not sold in any store. Here's how to order.
To save COD fees, have your credit card ready and call toll-free 1-800-228-2225. 1-800-228-2225. Or send only $19.98 to 100 Music Treasures, Box 3815, Grand Central Station, New York, New York, 10163. Specify whether 3 records, 3 cassettes, or 3 8-tracks. Write it down. Offer ends without notice. Or call 1-800-228-2225 now.
Former PTL leader Jim Baker says he and his family have only about $100,000 in cash. That despite reports he and his wife were paid nearly $2 million last year by the PTL ministry. As Bruce Bowers reports, the Bakers are getting some moral support.
About 2,000 people worshiped Sunday morning at Heritage Village Church, many with their hands lifted in prayer, some speaking in tongues.
The wonderful name of Jesus.
As this charismatic Pentecostal service took place inside, dissident PTL partners were outside passing out leaflets aimed at uniting against Jerry Falwell and his Baptist fundamentalism.
A lot of us with Jerry Falwell, and he's a fundamentalist, and he doesn't believe in the charismatic movement. But the main thing is that we feel like that this belongs to the partners, and the partners should be operating it, and not Jerry Falwell and his bunch.
But many worshipers here say they find no fault with Falwell, but call the dissidents troublemakers.
Terrible.
Why is that?
Isn't it? Isn't that the one that's trying to cause trouble? We love it here, like it is.
Officials at the U.S. Justice Department have been debating whether to open an investigation into the PTL scandal, and will meet again Monday to consider the question. If the Justice Department goes forward, it could open the possibility of criminal charges or even jail for former PTL officials.
I don't see anything wrong with an investigation, and because I think a lot of questions need to be cleared up in the minds of a lot of people.
I believe there should be an investigation, that's for sure. I just wouldn't like to see anything put behind bars.
If due process is undertaken and it's found in a fair court of law that they did something illegal, then they should suffer the legal consequences of it. And I would add, they will suffer the moral consequences of it, which doesn't have anything to do with our courts of law. They'll be judged in the long run. And anybody that's worrying about their getting away with something, I wouldn't worry about it. It'll all work itself out. The Lord will take care of them.
Bruce Bowers, Fort Mill.
Restaurant owners in Beverly Hills are fuming over a 2-month-old smoking ban. Some are getting around the ordinance by expanding their bar areas where smoking is still allowed. The Beverly Hills law is one of the toughest in the country. Customer reaction is mixed.
Well, I'm a non-smoker, but I feel that people should be able to smoke in a restaurant if they want to.
The smoking ban doesn't really bother me because I bring nicotine gum. And that's how I do it. Nicotine gum, and I don't have to worry. It's not offensive to anybody. And then when I'm done, I just stick it under the table, and nobody knows the difference.
Many restaurant owners have sued the city in an attempt to have the law declared unconstitutional. A police ballistics expert and a former medical examiner are expected to testify today in the trial of Bernard Goetz. Last week, the New York jury toured a subway car similar to the one in which Goetz shot 4 youths in 1984. The defense is expected to rest its case Tuesday. Despite the questionable reputation of used car salesmen, more Americans are buying used cars, and a new study by the Hertz Corporation shows people are paying higher prices. Last year, Americans bought almost 17 million used cars for about $5,800 apiece. That average purchase price is up 7.4% from 1985 levels. The study shows 45% of used car sales were made on the lots of new car dealers. The government is putting the brakes on truck and bus drivers who hold commercial licenses in more than one state. Beginning July 1st, most truck and bus drivers will be allowed to carry only one driver's license. The Transportation Department says many operators hold several licenses to hide poor driving records. Federal officials are still arguing over how dangerous it's going to be to fly this summer. The head of the National Transportation Safety Board, James Burnett, says more safety measures must be taken. He says the Federal Aviation Administration is too concerned about airline efficiency. But FAA Chief Donald Engen disagrees.
I don't think safety concerns should cause consumer problems, because I feel that this system is performing very well. In the past year, we've had a very fine safety record, both in the regional airlines and the national airlines. We've had a fine safety record in general aviation, and we're continuing. But you've got to remember that nobody can ever say there will not be an accident.
British air travelers also gripe about flight delays and poor service, but one airport has devised a discreet way to allow passengers to complain. John Donovan reports.
Say you're just touching down on the runway and you come into the airport in a lousy mood, fatigued, irritable, and all set to snap at anybody who asks that dumb question, how was your flight? Now you can remember these moments on videotape.
I honestly believe that for the extra price you take off me for the club seat, you could make the legroom a little bigger.
This man was just taping his complaints inside British Airways' new Video Point, a do-it-yourself, people-sized suggestion box installed this month at Heathrow Airport.
People already write to us, people already telephone us. Video is a modern, innovative medium, which we hope people will find a good way of getting things off their chest.
Since this box opened last week, an average 40 to 50 comments have been taped every day.
It's really quite easy to work this thing. All you have to do is sit down, push the button, make sure the door is closed, and you're on. And for the next 60 seconds, if I want to, I can say anything I want about British Airways.
But most people have had nice things to say about the airlines, while one of the complainers spoke so softly the microphones barely heard him.
Seem to be more comfortable with flight.
The idea for the airport box comes from this British TV show called Right to Reply, where a video box gets used by TV viewers unhappy with programming. This man recently disputed a TV comedian who had said sandwiches served on British trains taste awful.
I think it's delicious.
Well, out at the airport, is your average business traveler ready to have that much fun in a box? Who knows, maybe one of these days there will be a genius at work when that red light is flashing. John Donovan, CNN, London.
Headline Sports is next.
Darling, down and down I go, round and round.
Now, enjoy delicious fried food without fried food calories. Sound too good to be true? Introducing the incredible Swiss dry cooker. A simple, powerful design gives you crisp, deep-fried goodness with just a drop of oil. It seems like an ordinary pan, but look. The secret of the dry cooker is this patented hot air tower. Superheated air rushes up, circulates around food, cooking quickly, evenly. Dry cooking actually bastes food not in fattening grease, but in their own rich flavors and aromas. Yes, more flavor than you've ever tasted before, with less oil, fewer calories, less cholesterol. Watch. Deep-fried chicken cooks because it's surrounded by boiling oil. This batch actually soaked up this much oil. Put chicken in the dry cooker, and it's surrounded only by naturally flavored, superheated air. With only a drop of oil, turn out crispy, perfect frozen French fries and fish sticks. Bake a cake in a fry pan? Never. But watch. The cooker is so dry, you can actually bake on the stovetop. Superheated convection currents bake evenly, top and bottom. Dry cook hot dogs and they taste like they've been barbecued over a hickory fire, but that's still just the beginning. Dry cooked vegetables without boiling or steaming. Look at this amazing comparison. This broccoli was boiled, this done in the dry cooker, bursting with colors and vitamins. Baked potatoes taste like they've been roasted over a campfire. You can dry roast nuts or prepare a mouth-watering roast. The incredible Swiss dry cooker with exclusive hot air tower gives you all the flavor of crisp frying, but almost none of the fattening oils and calories. Order now on this special TV offer for just $19.95. Money back if not delighted. Use your credit card for rush delivery. Here's how to order.
To order from anywhere in the U.S., including Alaska and Hawaii, have your credit card ready and call toll-free. 1-800-257-1333. That's 1-800-257-1333. You can also save the COD charges by sending $19.95 plus $4 for postage and handling to Cooker. P.O. Box 8660, Atlanta, Georgia 30306.
It is 19 minutes past the hour. Time for Headline Sports.
I'm Steve Getty, Headline Sports. The Stanley Cup, won by Edmonton in 1984 and 85, has returned to the Oilers following that one-year absence. After trailing Philadelphia 1-0 earlier in Game 7 Sunday, Mark Messier tied it up. Then Yari Curry, on an assist from Wayne Gretzky, scored what proved to be the winning goal with about 5 minutes left in the second. A Glenn Anderson goal late in the third iced the 3-1 victory. In baseball, the Seattle Mariners completed a weekend sweep for the Orioles in Baltimore 8-5. John Moses collected 4 hits in leading the Mariners to the victory, which puts them 2.5 games out of first in the AL West. The Twins are also 2.5 back of the Royals after a doubleheader sweep in Detroit. Tom Brookins' error in the 8th on a Mark Salas grounder allowed the tying and winning runs to score. The Twins took the opener 9-5. In the nightcap, they clobbered the Bengals 11-3. The Yanks clipped Oakland. Milwaukee dumped Cleveland. The Jays handed California its 9th straight loss. Boston outlasted Chicago, and the Rangers nipped the Royals. Shane Rowley, with relief help, won his 6th game as the Phils beat L.A. 3-1, escaping last place in the NL East for the first time this season. Pittsburgh lost for the 6th straight time and replaced the Phillies at the bottom of the standings. Dave Parker's 6th-inning homer broke a 2-2 tie, and the Reds beat the Bucks 5-2. Ed Whitson and Rich Gossage combined to 4-hit the Mets as the Padres snapped a 7-game losing streak, 1-0. Atlanta outlasted the Cubs, Houston nipped St. Louis, and the Giants blanked Montreal. In Dublin, Ohio, Don Pooley fired a 2-under par 70 the final 18 holes to win the Memorial Tournament by 3 strokes over Kurt Byram. The win by Pooley ended the 12-year pro's 7-year drought on the PGA Tour. Cindy Rarick won her 2nd LPGA event of the year and career by birdieing the last 4 holes at the Corning Classic for a come-from-behind win. A pair of surprises at the French Open Sunday. 5th seed Helena Suková was knocked out by the 14th seed, while in the men's division, Martin Haite was ousted. Rookie Davey Allison grabbed the checkered flag at the Budweiser 500 at Dover Downs, Delaware. Bill Elliott finished almost 7 seconds behind the winner. Steve Getty, Headline Sports.
I'm Dave Walker, and Fort Lauderdale is what's hot. It's spring break reunion time, and the spirit is reminiscent of the 50s and 60s. Fort Lauderdale businesses hope this group will make up for a sparse college crowd earlier in the season.
I think Lauderdale will always be the original, and one day or another they will come back and they will be here and probably be well accepted again.
I'm Dave Walker, Headline News.
In the headlines, President Reagan wants to add AIDS to the list of diseases that could bar immigrants from entering or staying in this country. In a major speech on AIDS, Mr. Reagan also called for routine testing, education, and more research. An international conference on AIDS opens today in Washington, and the New York Times quotes government officials as saying the USS Stark failed to execute proper defensive maneuvers as that Iraqi jet approached 2 weeks ago. With the top stories, I'm Robin Welch.
More news after this.
Were you
answer 3 personal questions. Are you good with people? Do you love beauty and home products? Would you love to make $10 an hour in your spare time? If you said yes, 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 pick up the phone and call Blair now. Blair is ready to help you make extra money selling our wonderful products to your neighbors and friends at work. Call us now. We'll send you everything you need, our fabulous catalog of beautiful products. With our fine 65-year reputation standing behind you, you'll be proud to be known as a Blair dealer. You'll also receive our $20 gift kit with genuine jade pendant, musk fragrance, and aloe cream. It's free with your first order. Call Blair now. Take our personality quiz. Your answers could be worth up to $10 an hour starting almost immediately.
Call 800-533-1400. Blair dealers earn up to $10 an hour. Call now, 800-533-1400.
Some of America's top celebrities are doing a little moonlighting. They're promoting their favorite thirst quenchers for big dollars and cents. Frank Radis reports.
Michael Jackson made advertising history in 1983 when he signed on to endorse Pepsi. Jackson's endorsement was a coup for Pepsi's ad campaign, bringing it greater consumer recognition and an increased share of the market. It also set a trend in advertising for the beverage industry. Among the stars to join the celebrity bandwagon hawking soda and coolers is Grace Jones, former Beatle Ringo Starr, and the Pointer Sisters. Ken Ross is head of media relations for PepsiCo.
We try to create commercials that are at least as entertaining as the shows that they interrupt. And when you use the talents of a Michael Jackson or a Michael J. Fox, it makes that task a little bit easier.
But casting the stars can be a difficult task. Michael J. Fox might be right for selling soft drinks, but it takes another personality to hawk wine coolers.
It's very useful if you can find the proper match between the celebrity and the image that you're trying to project for the brand, which is the case with Seagram's Coolers and Bruce Willis.
Having fun? Seagram's Golden Wine Cooler.
Bruce Willis can peddle wine coolers, but does the star of moonlighting pull any weight with consumers?
I don't care what they like. It matters what I like.
They're just using their hype to, like, persuade you, make you think you could be glamorous like them.
Michael Jackson sells sodas? Nah, he's a singer, not a soda man.
Consumers may not admit to it, but sales have proven otherwise. Advertisers find that paying star salaries is a small price to pay for success.
It's really a small portion of the total amount of money that we spend on advertising in a year. And in a competitive business like soft drinks, you've got to capture the imagination of the consumers.
Frank Radis, CNN.
Sun Country.
From fox hunting to polo, many Americans have a love for all things British. Now another English tradition has joined the list, sheepdog trials. Patricia Otts explains.
The rolling countryside of Virginia played host to a 19th century sport practiced on the border between England and Scotland. That's why these dogs are called border collies. They are known for their sheep herding abilities, their intelligence, and their watchful eye. Sheep herding trials are becoming more and more popular in the United States.
If they don't have a natural instinct, it's like stock sense. If they don't have that natural stock sense, you can't ever teach it to them. They can have experience and learn to do some things, but they'll never make a great dog.
The object is to herd these Barbados sheep around a course, keeping the sheep moving in a straight line. At one point in the course, the dog must get the sheep into a pen. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The day is a festival of sorts, of dancing and shearing sheep, and just plain trying to beat the heat for both people and their best friends. But this sport from across the Atlantic has particular appeal to some Virginians because of their long-time association with all things British.
Virginia was founded by people from England, and it's a very old-fashioned conservative part of the country where people have stayed put for generations. And I think what they see here is the open space, the large stately homes, the beautiful walled gardens, and the ability to have animals.
The winner was a dog named Jen. Her owner, Bill Burhow, imported her from Scotland. What makes a winner?
A lot of partnership with the dog, a lot of time spent with the dog in work situations, a lot of understanding of the sheep and how the dog will respond to them.
Patricia Ox, CNN, Leesburg, Virginia.
That's our report this half hour. Thanks for joining us. I'm Lyn Vaughn. Around the world in 30 minutes. This is Headline News.
AIDS, the epidemic reaching critical proportions. Are Americans now a high-risk group? CNN begins live coverage of the opening session of the 3rd International Conference on AIDS. Monday on Day Watch at 9 a.m. Eastern on CNN.
Come on, snap out of it.
Mental illness is often misunderstood, so its victims wind up neglected. But mental illness can be treated once you learn to see the sickness. For an informative booklet, call the American Mental Health Fund.
From Turner Broadcasting System, this is the Headline News Network.